Okay, so thank you for the intro. I'm not going to talk that much about Greenstone. I'll talk a little bit about it throughout my talk, but actually the last talk was the perfect segue into mine. I want to talk about what my experiences have been in the industry, and I came out into the industry from CIAT about 9 years ago, and I want to talk about how I've seen the role of a designer, the responsibilities of a designer change throughout that time, and also things that bother me about our industry. So like Russ said, I was a part of the 2006 Italia Field School. This is us doing our one and only test or exam during that time. That's me up there. And as you can see, we were so cool and normcore before that was even cool. All of us are wearing cargo shorts or cargo pants over here, which is pretty awesome. So this is what the internet looked like when I was leaving CIAT about 10 years ago, and so much has changed in that time, from the way we think about, talk about, practice design. And the introduction of new technologies changed that. It was 10 years ago that the iPhone came out. Our ability to access the internet has changed that. Our ability to customize and personalize data and the information we want to receive has changed that. And when I started out as an interaction designer, I thought my role was just about optimizing existing experiences and making really cool UI. And a designer's role back then was very engineering and technology driven. And through testing and validation, we would find use cases to fit into technology and continually improve on what's possible. But I think it's safe to say that we've optimized the shit out of UI already. Research and validation have given us all the best practices that we need for forms, drop-downs, and other inputs. And we've developed rules and systems and designed new systems and frameworks to work around these elements. We started thinking about design in a more strategic way. How could we create efficiencies for ourselves as designers? And rather than designing the micro details, we were designing the way that we approach challenges as well. Along the way, things got a little weird too. Tech became pop culturalized. And the internet everywhere opened up doors for technology. And then we started seeing some unintended consequences with things like this, like people building, like making inappropriate burgers, or in this person's case, an $80 burger. The accessibility to the internet and technology also opened up the door to the design of new markets. We started designing new experiences, new ways to live, new ways to work, new economic models, and in Airbnb's case, new ways that we think about travel. And now, for travelers, Airbnb has made that experience the preferred option and the preferred mode of travel. But if we think about some of the consequences that have come out of that, every major North American city right now is struggling with dealing with short-term rentals, the eviction of tenants, and rising rents. I think in the most simplest and most understandable way, design is a plan for how you want the world to be. And I've seen technology shift design into ideology. We're at an interesting moment now where we're thinking about design in a new way. Joe Gebbia at Airbnb believed in the ideology of traveling like a local. And from that, he created a new market that was ripe with new opportunities for new relationships and also new economic models as well. And with the increasing opportunities, the greater the impact that we have, and also the greater the responsibility that we have as designers. So I see responsibility, so our responsibility as designers, it goes beyond empathy, I feel. It goes beyond creating just efficiencies and optimizations for users. We need to consider the way that we impact people, the way we impact relationships, and markets as well. We saw design play a big role in this past year. And you could say our industry has played a role in creating more division and more anger in society on both sides as well. And technology has changed so rapidly that we may have missed some of those consequences of focusing too much on just optimization of how people consume confirmation or consume information and get information. And this is not something that we're immune to north of the border as well. It's estimated that 40% of our labor force here will be affected by automation in 10 to 20 years. So what happens when our labor force is replaced? Will we have created enough new markets, new revenue models, new economies by then? I'm not going to swear again, but I'll let my slides do it. So on to the things that are bothering me about design. I feel like we're missing, a diversity of perspectives in our industry right now. And it's really impeding our ability to find these new markets and new opportunities for design. Design is elitist. I don't think just our industry needs to become more diverse, but our designers need to become more diverse. There's no perfect path that you can go on to become a designer. You don't always have to go into design school. And I find some of the most interesting designers that I meet are people who come from different backgrounds. We need to think beyond the mold of what the designer looks like, talks like, and this also includes racial and cultural and socioeconomical diversity as well. How can we create better work environments for people of different races, different cultural backgrounds, and for rich and poor as well, that are more inclusive? Our industry is isolated. All of us here are designing from the urban centers of North America. And in those urban centers in North America, Vancouver, Toronto, the Silicon Valley, or New York, we're just people inside a box trying to think outside of the box. Our industry is sexist, and we've heard a lot of stats about women in tech and women in design so far. But I don't need to talk about that. I think my favorite example here is when HealthKit came out for Apple. It came out without having any ability to track your reproductive health, something that I think is important for about 50% of our society. And it wasn't until a full year after HealthKit launched that they included that in there. Our industry is ageist. Facebook, Google, AOL, on average, their employees are 30 years or younger. I think I need to start planning my retirement soon. And then lastly, our industry is not inclusive. So I think inclusion involves more than just designing for the visually impaired or designing for people who have blindness issues, but we need to think about the services we provide as well. So, for example, I have a neighbor who's deaf, and he shouldn't have to knock on my door every time he needs to call BC Hydro, every time he needs to call Shaw Cable, because they don't include any email contact or a live chat option for them. What does diversity look like? Diversity is urban, suburban, and rural. This is Water Valley, Mississippi. It's a really small rural town in the southern states. And it was actually derelict 15 years ago. People have moved out of the town. The IRS owned most of the buildings in the downtown core on the main street. And this couple who were working in an urban center nearby, they were working in tech. They were visiting the town and fell in love with it. So they had this vision. What if they could design a new economy to revitalize that town. They were able to purchase many of the buildings on the main street, and they gathered a small group of people who shared that vision with them together to restore the historic buildings and also build new businesses there. So a former machine shop turned into a brewery, a former drugstore turned into an art gallery, a service station became a restaurant. They also added cafes, new apartments as well. And last year, they added a coding school where rural kids could spend a year and learn how to code for free. And they didn't do this as a pro bono project. These were actual businesses. They weren't wildly profitable, but they looked at success in a different way beyond dollars and cents. They provided a future for the town now, and the town is what sustains them. Say Work is redesigning how women look at career paths. So the way we work hasn't changed in about 50 years. The way we work was designed from a male-dominated industry, and it doesn't consider when women need to make the choice or feel like they need to make the choice between starting a family or growing their career. They look for jobs from top companies, and they pre-negotiate the flexibility for women and match women with these jobs. And this is one of the things I love about Greenstone, is because we're just designers trying to design our own company. We have a woman who's a producer at just 15 miles from Sacramento, and she just wants to be able to pick up her kids from school at 3 every day. And I think it's pretty cool that we're able to be flexible and create different working models for our people. This is a bit more of their site. Some more agency love. This is Mesa Cadira, and they're an agency out of Brazil. They have these things called mesas, which are their design challenges. It's a 6-day intensive challenge where they all get together around a table, like you see on the right, and they prototype a solution by the end of the 6 days. What I think they're doing that's really interesting is that it's not just the clients and the designers that are at the table, but they invite leaders and thinkers from other industries to join them on these design challenges. And if you go to their site, you could even apply to join one of those design challenges with them. So, this is Judson Manor in Cleveland. It's a retirement community, and it's right next to the Cleveland Institute of Music. So the Institute of Music was running into a problem where they didn't have enough housing for their students. So they decided to partner up with this retirement home, provide their students with adequate housing, and in turn, the students would give the seniors at the home a concert once a month. So this reciprocal relationship that was being formed, like the students are opening their minds to different people who are not just within their social circles, but it broadens their perspective, and it also helps keep the seniors there reinvigorated and as they're dealing with the challenges that they face with aging. So I think if you don't know many people who are living with challenges and disabilities, one thing that you could do is just go on YouTube. There are a lot of really creative people who aren't as able as some, and they're actually producing some really interesting content online. So this is Amethyst. She's 22, and she has a channel where she talks about her life just being autistic and what it's like going through day-to-day life, some terminology that you may not know that goes along with being an autistic person. This is Tommy Edison. He's visually impaired, but he has a unique perspective on what it's like doing day-to-day tasks, like taking out money from an ATM machine. So inclusive design is good for everyone. And I just want to leave off with like a few tips along the way. So what can you do? I think you could get comfortable being uncomfortable. And when I look back, some of the projects that I'm most proud to have worked on, some of the projects that were most meaningful to me were the hardest ones that I worked on. Like I'm talking blood, sweat, and tears hard. Maybe not blood, but definitely tears. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. But embrace that tension that comes along with when people from different backgrounds and different points of view come together. Consider the unintentional consequences of design. So have you considered all the things that could go wrong? Maybe instead of brainstorming what you'd like the world to be, you could also brainstorm at the same time, well, who are we impacting? What could possibly go wrong? This is something that I'm guilty of not being so good at. And it just goes to show you that you should be expanding your social circles. Don't be comfortable within your own circle and your own group. Meet as many people from different perspectives as possible. We heard a lot about empathy today. And it's not just empathy for the people that you're designing for, but empathy for your clients, for your coworkers, for the people that you're impacting. And if you're like me and you don't really like talking, talk as much as you listen, because you can't design the future unless you can articulate your vision of it. So design has never had a bigger platform than it has now. It's never been easier to create content, to publish it, to get your points of view out. And it's important to consider diversity and inclusion as the critical factors to make change, because it's the only way that we'll be able to reach people, reach new markets, and it's the only way that we'll be able to consider all the effects and impacts of our design. Thank you.